Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Public Works Podcast. My name is Joseph Blackman. Today, got a real treat for you. Her name is Bethany Yaffe, and she is the civil engineer for Arvada in Colorado. Did I say it right?
You
Arvada?
did. Good job. Yes,
All right.
Arvada.
Arvada. Where is Arvada at? I know where Denver is. I know where the mountains are at. Where's Arvada?
So Arvada is about, 20, 30 minutes northwest of downtown Denver. So kind of right between Boulder and Denver, you're going to
Okay.
find Arvada if you're going up to the northwest.
Okay. And you're a civil engineer, which is a super duper vague term.
It is.
I'm sure I'm sure the title doesn't encompass everything that you do within the city. But let's hit the rewind button. Let's go into young Bethany. Was young high school Bethany interested in civil engineering, or and then also what was your trajectory to get to the position where you're at today?
Mine was fairly meandering, and the answer to the first question is no. Young Bethany was not interested in civil engineering. I loved chemistry. And ironically enough, that was the avenue that kind of pushed me into my specific discipline within civil is environmental. And so I basically just worked on water. I did, like the required air classes, the required remediation, but I really focused on water because I loved aqueous chemistry. So I actually have a science undergrad in biology. I initially thought I was going to be going into some sort of medicine, and I just love helping people. And after I actually looked at what I'm good at, if somebody's crying, I'm probably going to be crying too. I probably shouldn't be the one that's trying to help them, they feel better. So I tried to look at some other avenues that I could use aqueous chemistry. I worked abroad with a nonprofit for a while between my bachelor's and my master's. And what we saw there, and a lot of the conversations we had with people, linked quality of life with their access to clean water and sanitation. And so what I saw was this beautiful nexus of what I love. I'm just such a chemistry nerd. I like helping people. I'm good at it. And so I decided to go into environmental engineering, not really even understanding completely what it was, other than what a great way to be able to help care for people by giving them clean water.
Totally. You said you worked abroad. What country did you work in?
So we were based in Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, but they did work in all these other countries that were experiencing sectarian violence. So into China, Serbia, areas in Africa and Palestine. And over and over and over again, we would see and talk to people that had either lived or worked in those areas where people were dying from diseases that we just don't see in the United States.
Wow.
Because we have, for the most part, because we have a developed water system. So that was kind of like my opening to, this is a really big need no matter where you go across the world.
Totally. And would you advise every young person coming out of engineering school, or, in engineering school, to go and do something like that, just to kind of get a bigger view of stuff outside of America?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that we can get that. There's a lot of opportunities with Engineers Without Borders. There's just a ton of nonprofits that if you wanted to learn about them, you can. There's one in the United States that I really like called Dig Deep that actually works in First Nations lands, because across the United States, there's people that don't have access to clean water as well. And most of those people live in First Nations lands. So that's, there's a lot of different ways that we can learn about it. But in general, I think it is great for people to learn just about the world in general, because we live in such a microcosm where you can go to the tap and turn water on. And you don't think about countries even that are developed that you can't do that. Because even in Ireland, a lot of their water systems are wells, but their water table is so high and they are on so many septic systems that even though you're paying for water, it might not be, I mean, granted, if it's well, you're not paying for it, but it might not be clean to drink because there's so much carryover from their septic systems into the groundwater table.
Okay. And then I need a definition from you. You said aqueous chemistry. So what is that? Can you define it for us and tell us what
Um,
it is?
chemistry and water.
Okay. I figured that.
So
I figured
yeah,
aqua and chemistry, but
yeah,
there's more to it, I'm sure.
yeah. Um, I very much focus on water treatment and distribution. And wastewater is really fun, but it's really focused on microbiology with all the bugs eating the nutrients. And with water treatment, it's looking at the water chemistry. And I mean, a lot of this is like hands-on jar testing, seeing what chemicals work. But in general, we always start with the water chemistry. What's in the water? What are we treating for? What are the concerns that we have? As an example, Arvada is downstream from a uranium mine, an old uranium mine. And while they have done a pretty good job recently of mitigating uranium, if they don't, then we have uranium in our water. It's really easy to remove, but it's just you just need to start with like what are we working with so we know how to treat it.
Sure, sure. Okay. What's your normal Tuesday like? Like, are you out
Normal
in the
Tuesday.
river testing for uranium? Like, are you got
No.
waders on and beakers? Like, so what what do you do all day? If that
Um,
makes sense.
yeah, it does. So I actually function mostly as a project manager in the city on a normal Tuesday. Tuesdays are actually my quiet days. And so it's normally like answering questions. Right now, we have a project at our treatment plant, one of our treatment plants, that we are rehabilitating the filter system as well as the solids handling system. And so a lot of my focus is going there. Answering questions, being on site and looking at the construction progress. When you're working with old facilities, it's stuff breaks. Like our treatment plant was originally built in 1962, so it's 60 years old this year, and it concrete's old. Chemical lines that are underground, PVC gets really worn out by carrying caustic chemicals like sodium hypochlorite that we use for disinfection. That broke recently. And it's underground. So just trying to find it and fix it. So a lot of it is just trying to coordinate these responses to both active construction as well as emergencies that are coming up, like that chlorine line breaking.
Sure, sure. What problems, I guess, are you solving in today's, I guess, in these days? Like what's the I mean, because you hear about stuff like PFAS,
Hmm.
we hear about instances like I think it was Alabama or Louisiana or Detroit, they had that water. So what issues is Arvada solving for today?
That's a really good question. Honestly, it's mostly just aging infrastructure. We are really lucky. We get 75% of our water from a Denver water system, the Gross Reservoir that feeds into Ralston and Ralston Reservoir. And that water, the last time we had it tested, did not have any detectable PFAS in it. I'd already mentioned this is pretty standard across most of the water utilities in this area, but we do have some radionuclides that we're trying to treat for. But again, that's really easy to take out, and it's not detectable in the water once we treat it. Mostly, it's just aging infrastructure. Both of our plants are old, and even the newer of our two plants, when it was built, the technology was dated by about 20 years. So what we're dealing with is we have had historically low rates, which while that is great for our community, and it has also led to kind of the shortfall in reinvestment back into our infrastructure, which is one of the reasons why we are looking at rate increases and have instituted rate increases for the next year. So because we're getting to the point where we're walking this tightrope of we have all these issues of infrastructure failing or close to failure, but our means of paying for that is fairly limited. I was joking the other day that we're running out of things to steal from Peter to pay Paul. Because we would literally like take equipment that had been broken and take the pieces that we could use in the other infrastructure that is no longer being produced, like electrical parts, or getting parts off of eBay. And we're getting to the point where you just can't do that anymore. There's only so much that you can steal from one broken part to put into one that to make it work.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
I'm hearing that so much though.
yeah,
A lot of cities, a lot of treatment facilities are dealing with stuff that's just old. And you can only band-aid
yes,
something so much. And then you got to go back to the citizens and say, hey, we want to beef up our system so it can last for another 20, 30 years. The rates are going to go up, but here's why. And I
yeah.
appreciate you saying, like, yeah, there's going to be rate increases, but here's the reason why there's going to be rate increases.
Yeah. We've been trying to work really hard just to be transparent with, and when I say we, there's an amazing team that I work with within Public Works and the utilities departments to be transparent with what we're dealing with. And then this is our response to it. And one of those is that development pays for development with system development charges. So like growth pays for growth. And then reinvestment into our infrastructure is through rates and fees that the residents are paying. So that's something that we are working really hard both to portray to City Council as well as the residents that we're serving. That our goal is to produce high quality water. We're passionate about it. We care, and we are trying to do the best that we can with what we have while being mindful that we understand this is hard. Inflation is high, and it's hard to pay an additional fee every month. In our case, it's
Sure.
bi-monthly, but.
Sure. Okay, let's talk more about your position. I always like to ask about skill sets. Let's say
Mhm,
you're mentoring young Bethany, 21, 22-year-old Bethany. She's all
mhm.
ready to take on the world and, stop the pollution. So what, and she asked you, she said, hey, more seasoned Bethany, what skill set should I pick up to be successful at being a civil engineer for a city like Arvada? What
Mhm.
skill set would you tell a young Bethany to pick up?
I would probably tell her, get real comfortable talking in front of people because you're going to do it a lot more than you ever think you're going to. Um,
Really?
yeah, just meeting with city council and other city management. Because like I said, we're just trying to be really clear with what's going on. So trying to meet with them regularly or just giving them an idea of what's going on. I haven't necessarily done all of that. It's mostly like people in the director position, but it's something that I didn't think I would do a whole lot of in college. Another is work on big picture thinking. I mean, I am an engineer and boy, can I get into the weeds. Just to take a step back and think about big picture ideas is something that I'm learning every day is more important. Because as I'm looking at this is broken over here, but is there something that's higher risk? Really big picture thinking. Collaborative mindset is huge working for utility, and I had no idea. I came from the private sector, and I need to make sure that I am talking to so many different groups within the city, purchasing, legal, GIS. Public Works and Utilities are actually two separate silos at the City of Arvada. And so I just need to make sure that both my directors and my managers in Public Works are on board, but also everybody within Utilities and Operations is on board as well. And then there's this really beautiful thing that just comes naturally from this big picture thinking is to try to think creatively to solve problems. Like we have this issue here, but maybe a better way of like if we have low chlorine in one area, like maybe instead of dosing higher, we can look at mixing a tank. So that creative problem solving really helps when you're working with limited assets. As in like it's more expensive to dose this, would be cheaper to like, and you get better results if you just mix a tank kind of thing.
Sure. So, in line with the big picture thinking, I always like to think in the future too. Like, what do you think the civil engineer for Arvada is going to be solving 25 to 50 years from now? Like,
Yeah.
will it be the same stuff that you see all day, every day, just repeat it for 25, 50 years?
I
Or
mean,
like,
I
what
really
will they
hope
do?
not. What would they do? I really hope not. I honestly think that we are putting ourselves in a really good position, um, in a number of different ways. I think in previous forms of how we had done planning, we didn't think of sites that would be used in perpetuity. But as cities grow out, we realize that we have to do that. If we're acquiring land for something for utilities infrastructure like a tank, a pump station, a treatment plant, we need to get enough land so that we can build something new in that space when that infrastructure that we built 50 years ago is no longer able to function. So that's something that we are trying to set us up for future success. As well as doing really comprehensive future planning of population density, population growth. And in that way, like I said, I think we're setting ourselves up in a really good spot. Like we have enough raw water sources that we can provide the whole city to build out. We are looking at in perpetuity sites so that as we are looking at replacing water treatment plants, which that's going to be the next 25-year thing. Like we have this plant from 1962. That needs to be replaced at some point in time. We're also looking at a newer treatment plant somewhere sooner than that. Because like I said, both of our treatment plants are really right either at the edge or past their useful life. So we're trying to be really mindful of how we're going to plan this and how do we serve these communities in a way that works. Another thing that when my manager and I were brought on to the city at the same time, prior to us being hired, we didn't have a utility specific engineering group. And something that my boss has worked really hard on and something that she brings everyone together for is a level of service goals. So I'm hoping that as we're doing all this work, and basically what that means is like putting really achievable goals that keep us producing high quality water, as in like we won't have any tier 1 violations, for instance, like looking at ways that we can put on paper that we are going to be serving our community that we can meet. And so I'm hoping that in 25 years, they're going to be in a really good spot that will set them up for treatment plants that are going to work for the water quality that we're going to see in the future, like looking at climate change. That as things fail, there's going to be space and availability of both funds and land to be able to replace them. So I'm hoping we're doing our due diligence now to set us up for success in the future.
Sure. All right, story time.
Yes.
I need a story from Bethany. When something went wrong under your watch, what you did to fix it, and then what lessons you learned from it, so we could all learn from your detriment, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny because when I read this question initially, there's so many things that come to mind, especially from before I was at Arvada. But one that I wanted to touch on quickly, just because this happened this summer on one of the hottest days. So our treatment plant, the one that produces most of the water for the city, is fed from pretreatment with one channel, and it has no isolation and there's no redundancy or resiliency. And so if that goes down, our entire treatment plant goes down, and we're basically to indoor use only, which in Colorado, it's like moving a boulder, right? Trying to get like, you can't just stop people from watering their lawns with a notice right away. Or all outdoor use is basically what we would have had to stop if this flume goes down that's feeding the filters. So this past winter, when I was trying to set the scope for the project that I'm currently managing at the treatment plant that I mentioned earlier, there's these cracks in the flume wall, and we had noticed it. We knew that it was there. We decided to wait to do the repairs until this construction project started in October, because we didn't have the skill set within the city itself to fix this. And it needs a pretty robust fix because it's old concrete. It's only 9 inches thick. just the loss of concrete from water moving through that crack was about 3 inches. So now we have 6 inches of concrete between water and the outside. This is a foundation wall for this part of the building. So we didn't want to undermine this area without having this specific skill set on site that a contractor, a skilled contractor would bring. So knowing that this is a big risk, we decided to wait. It was kind of like damp, but it wasn't actively running water. And in one of the hottest days in the summer, it started leaking, like active water started flowing out. And the loss of concrete during this was just kind of scary. Like if this went out, we would lose this part of the building. And knowing that, I looked at that and I said, I see this risk, but I want to wait until October. That was very humbling. We had to shut the plant down that produces most of our water. So on a max day, we're looking, 42 million gallons per day. Our larger plant, which is the one that was having this issue, produces max about 36 million gallons per day. And then our other plant is around 12 to 14 million gallons per day. And but it's lower elevation, and so we actually have to pump up a couple of times to get into these high zones because we're right at the base of the mountains here. And so we had to shut down our big plant, use the smaller of our two plants that had a polymer system, a chemical system down at the same time. So I think everybody was just completely on edge. Like you don't want to have a negative pressure vent in the system. Like that's when you go on boil orders. And we were just like, we were getting ready to speak to the public that we could have emergency boil orders, that we could have emergency inside use only. However, we had just contracted with PCL, who's a contractor that works, they're pretty extensive in the United States, as a CMGC during pre-construction phase services for this project. So we were able to, I kind of felt like a general, like we have an emergency, guys, like what can we do to fix this? So we called everybody, the engineer, the contractor, and within 24 hours of us knowing about this leak, we had the plant down. PCL had taken bits and pieces from some of their other projects, some specialized Sika products that will seal the concrete and stop it from leaking. Had inflatable plugs on site to keep the water back if necessary, like if this leak repair didn't take. So it was kind of this all hands on deck. We fixed it. It took about 8 hours to fix this leak. And we were able to turn the plant back on. And so it ended up working out fine. There was no emergency, but we were close and it was really scary. And so,
Wow.
I don't know necessarily what to take as far as like a lesson here, other than when you see something that's potentially leaking, maybe you should do something about it sooner. I don't know.
Gotcha. No, that sounds like a movie. Like you had to call everybody in, and you got these
Yeah.
contractors coming in with their fixes, and you're like, whoa, like, how do you not like wear all this? Like you should have like super duper gray hair and be like crazy right now. But like you're just chill, you're calm, like you have a lot of it. You hold the power to a lot. So how do you not take that home with you and let it like wear on you?
Especially during emergencies, like I had mentioned, so during this flume leak, we also had another emergency where a chemical chlorine line broke. During that emergency, I don't think I slept for a couple of days until I knew that was going to hold. But honestly, Arvada is not the only city that's dealing with this. You see this across the country, that we're dealing with old infrastructure. And I think the most extreme example right now that we could point to is Jacksonville, Mississippi. And so I know I'm doing my best. I know I have some really great minds behind me that are helping me make these choices. I know that you know, it's never ideal to ask people to pay more money every month for their water, but like I believe in the power of clean water as a public health and a public right. And so I go to bed every day feeling like I did the best that I can to try to provide water for this community that I was raised in. And I did my best. And so I'm able to like kind of set that aside, but some days it's not easy, especially when you're like, kind of need to fix this or else some bad stuff's gonna happen.
Sure, sure. How does Bethany keep her sword sharp? Like, what's your personal and professional development regimen like to
Mhm.
stay up with what's new, what's what's working out there, what's not working out there, still what's innovative, and how you can skin the cat better.
Yeah, well, it helps that I'm really nerdy, and so I enjoy reading journals that are coming out as well as watching trainings because there's a lot with AWWA as well as some companies will provide regular training, and then just journals that are coming out. I have a really great community of people that I found that are producing really high quality literature. Um, Another thing that I've developed is a really amazing network of other utility engineers, so water utility engineers that we meet with and or talk with pretty regularly. So I have some really good friends at surrounding utilities like Boulder and Westminster, Colorado, that we're able to share knowledge. And I think just that institutional sharing of information uh, is really just invaluable. Because in the end, like I said, we're not the only ones. A lot of people are dealing with this issue of aging infrastructure and limited means. And so we're able to share some information back and forth. But also we have some incredible institutional knowledge at Arvada, like our water treatment plant manager. He has been at the city for 36 years and he knows all these projects that happen because he was there. I think he remembers. And so his knowledge of how to treat this water, how to care for this equipment, how to make sure that the plant is running optimally is just incredible. And then the operators working underneath him and the SCADA technicians are just fantastic. So I trust them and I'm able to go to them with questions and get a lot of support and answers, as well as trusting that when they tell me something's a problem, they can tell it to me in a way that I know what needs to be done. So
Sure,
I
sure,
have a
sure. I
great
like
team.
that. And let's say we ask somebody that they know you, but they don't work with you. And I asked them, I said, what does Bethany do for our community? What would they get totally wrong in that answer?
I don't know. I don't. I was actually. I don't know if a lot of people understand how water gets to the tap.
They don't.
So I don't know if they would know. I think I gave my family a training recently to practice that I was going to give to operators, and they looked at me like, "That's what you do? This is what you do? You work in here?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is what I
Yeah.
do." Um, so I just I don't know if they would know what I do. I was being teased internally because I was on the front page of the Arvada Press, which is our local paper, because it was an article about the rate increase, and so I was waiting for someone to like recognize me there, but that hasn't happened. So because it says what I
Wow.
do in the paper.
Yeah, yeah.
As a civil engineer. But yeah, I don't think many people know. So one of the things that I like doing, and I think people have a lot of patience with me, is talking about our water systems in general, because we are so lucky that we get to turn our water on and that we don't have to worry about pathogens or chemicals in our water that are going to make us sick. Um, and it's just something that I just can never really like get over, like how lucky I am that I get to live in this amazing community and turn my tap on and drink delicious
Sure,
water. And I get
sure.
to flush my
What's like
toilet and it goes away. How amazing is that?
isn't that cool?
Yes.
We all take it for granted. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, I get it. What's the most infamous or the most frequent text message? Because you said you're from that town and you know a lot of people there and a lot of people know you. Like, what do people usually text you about in regards to city work?
Oh, that's funny. A lot of the times, because I'll tell them I work for the water department, and so I'll get texts about ditches. Like, "Can you fix this ditch? It's, like, overgrowing." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think you understand, like, ditches are their own entity. Like, this is nothing to do with me." Or that we recently instituted, I think within the last little bit more than a year, we instituted trash hauling
Yep. Yeah.
um, as a citywide benefit, and some people weren't very happy with it. And so when I walk around with my Arvada t-shirt on, I will get stopped. And people will tell me, they didn't pick my trash up yesterday. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't I don't know how to fix that for you.
Yeah, let me get right to that. Yeah. Gotcha, gotcha. All right, let's say Bethany is commissioned to put up a billboard, and this
Okay.
billboard is in the most trafficked area of Arvada. What ask of your community in regards to environmental engineering would you put on this billboard?
Um, what would I put? Uh, oh, I don't know. There's so many soapboxes that I can get on. Um,
Love
um,
how you're honest.
it's well, we live in a semi-arid climate, so that's like I just feel like water matters. Like Arvada water matters. Um, we live in an area with intense winds, especially as you get further west, and I know that people are really uh, careful about watering there, and one of the reasons they feel safe about that is because of wildfires. Like we actually had a wildfire and a near evacuation of our far northwest area of Arvada last winter with the Marshall Fire that was moving south, and and having and that was in December, but in general, I know that was a concern this summer was being able to keep that vegetation around their homes moist enough that we wouldn't have issues with wildfire. Um, just because those winds there can just move something like lightning fast, move that fire so fast. So water matters. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Um, There's another thing I'd probably put is that we have a whole website just about utilities transparency. You can find that online, and if you have any questions about what's going on, it's everything's on YouTube. Like all of the presentations that the directors have made to council, it's there. So if they have any questions, they can find that information. And I just think that having knowledge about what we're doing and why is so powerful in these instances.
Sure, sure. Okay, let's say I'm coming to Arvada and I text you ahead of time and I say, "Hey, Bethany, where can I go to get the best burger in Arvada?" Where would you send me?
Oh, see, this one's hard because honestly, I think the best burgers in Denver.
Come on, you got to represent Arvada. Come
I
on,
know, but
come
like,
on.
okay,
Don't say
oh
Five
gosh,
Guys or
I'm not gonna
or
say
Jack in
Five
the Box.
Guys.
Okay,
No, no, there's a restaurant downtown Denver called My Brother's Bar, and it is just the best burgers ever.
My brother's
Um,
bar.
yes, so I would send you there. I would say let's go down that direction.
You got to feed the community because when the rates go up, everybody, come on, Bethany.
Yeah, okay, so where would
Economic.
I go otherwise? I would pr oh gosh. I would probably go somewhere into Old Town Arvada. We have a really nice little Old Town area with some
Okay,
good restaurants. Homegrown Tap and Dough is pretty good. Um,
gotcha.
but there's also the schoolhouse, which is down the street, and then if you go in happy hour, they have some really good, like, whiskey tasting options too.
Okay, okay. All right, all right. Well, Bethany, always like to leave a space on the show for you to thank mentors that you had along your journey, and then
Mhm.
also offer a word of inspiration and motivation to your industry counterparts.
Um, okay, so my mentors, I've had a lot. I've had a lot of people that have taken the time and energy to teach me. And one of them is my good friend, Chris Olson, and he is a utility engineering manager for the wastewater department at the city of Boulder. And he is just phenomenal with his knowledge. And he has spent a lot of time teaching me. And he's still one of those guys that I'll go to when I have questions. He's just fantastic, and he loves teaching. He's very pedagogical. He'll take the time to make sure you understand what's going on. My boss, Mary Stahl, who's the utilities manager, is just fantastic. The way that she handles people and pragmatic choices in really challenging circumstances is just second to none. And I really appreciate the work that she's done. Yeah. And then what was the second part of that question? I'm sorry. Oh, words of advice.
Yeah, or encouragement, inspiration to other civil engineers.
To other engineers. What would I say? I think that people know this, but our work matters, and we're doing something that impacts our community in really beautiful ways. And what else would I say? I don't know. I'd probably ask them for a beer so we could go geek out a little bit.
Totally.
About water systems. There's that sometimes it's hard, but there's just so much pride in being able to go home and knowing that you did something good for your community.
Sure. If you could be a environment engineer or be over the wastewater department in any city outside of the US or outside of North America, where would you go?
Where would I go? I would go to southern France. That's where I would go.
I mean, are we going for the wine? Are we going for the Mediterranean? Is it that bad in southern France?
Is it that bad? So if I was doing wastewater,
Yeah.
why would I want to go to southern France?
Yeah.
Because it's beautiful and warm, and you can sit outside and drink wine and eat food all the time.
I love your honesty. I love it because you're being real. Most people say, "Oh, I want to go to like Africa or Southeast Asia because third world." But I love how you said, I go to south of France.
That's really funny that you asked that. Now I feel embarrassed. I would go to.
You're honest.
My answer. I can be much more humanitarian.
No, you're fine.
That being said, if I could choose anything and do anything, I would probably be helping. It would be helping underserved communities.
Sure.
I like with the Red Cross or something like that. But
gotcha. But you would vacation in the south of France.
I would vacation in the south of France. I wouldn't mind living in Geneva though, since that's where the Red Cross is located.
Love it. Love it.
That's so funny. I should have thought about that a little bit more. Maybe.
No,
it's like
you kept it honest.
Honest answer.
It's
just beautiful.
Well, Bethany, thanks for hopping on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your wealth of information and knowledge. To all the listeners out there, make sure you share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Just know that Arvada water matters and that engineers' work matters. And then, hey, when those rates go up, just know why the rates are going up and know what it means. Like you've got some good stuff coming down the pipeline, no pun intended. Bethany, before we get out of here, any final words for us or for the viewers?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been a Public Works podcast, and thank you for tuning in.